It was 14 years ago that I was assigned by my law firm to be the mentor of a young gay man named Ricardo, who was a student at Northeastern Law School. He'd come to Boston by way of the West Texas town of Van Horn. Parents were immigrants from Mexico. Family to them meant everything. For Ricardo, coming out in college didn't go so well. His mother refused to mention it ever again, and she never asked about him or his life when they made their weekly phone calls or when he went home for the holidays. Maybe that's why he never mentioned them every time we got together over the years. So I caught up with Ricardo last Tuesday for breakfast. I was surprised, to say the least, when the first thing he wanted to tell me about was his family. My mother, he said. My mother said the word gay. Finally, she asked me about my life. What happened, I asked. Well, and then he paused. You're not going to believe this. It started when she asked me if I'd heard about Ricky Martin. Now, for those of you who are laughing, Ricky Martin was a one-day story in English, but it is still being written about in Spanish. In English, he may just be another papi chulo to some of you, but in Spanish, his coming out story was seismic, on par with Ellen DeGeneres. Just ask Ricardo's mom. You see, Spanish or English, it's the power packed by a story and amplified by the media that changes hearts and minds. And that's GLAAD's arena, where we advocate every day for the full equality of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender Americans. Every day, GLAAD's the watchdog in the media. Just last week, if you recall the CNN feature story on the ex-gay Richard Cohen. He'd lost his counselor's license because of ethical violations, but CNN still chose to bill him as a psychotherapist and an educator. He was there to educate us about the importance of curing gay people. CNN claimed they needed balance. I guess it's kind of hard to believe since it's been about 40 years since they called us an illness. GLAAD launched a Facebook and Twitter campaign against this network. We asked them to apologize and address their concerns on air. After thousands and thousands and thousands of emails, of Facebook pastings to their page, CNN did apologize. And that is GLAAD at work. We media watchdog, but we advocate too. Last year, when right-wing activists in Washington state put their civil unions law on the ballot, GLAAD was on the ground 3 times. The last time for 7 full weeks. We were training couples to talk about their stories in the press. We were meeting with editorial boards. We were getting coverage in the news for all of these gays and lesbian families who were going to lose their basic rights should this be repealed. And when the good people of Washington voted, they became the first state to reject these relationship recognition ballots where they take away our rights, the first state in the country to do so at the ballot. That was a big victory. GLAAD was part of it. That's how GLAAD does its work. GLAAD is also a storyteller. Like the story of anti-gay Reverend Rick Warren and his other far-right leaders who paint themselves as moderate in the United States, but in Uganda they work with their friends who are trying to make it a crime punishable by death. Punishable by death simply to be gay. GLAAD partnered with a number of other LGBT organizations to put on the National Prayer Hour. And we directed the media, we directed the press, and aggressively and successfully shaped the story about Reverend Warren and his friends to turn public opinion against Uganda's bill and against these conservatives who want to make our lives punishable by death. Watchdog, advocate, storyteller. That's GLAAD at work. And another way we do our work is right here at these media awards. The media awards nominees, all of the people you've seen today on these reels, these raise the bar in Spanish and in English. Their stories show America our challenges. They show America our aspirations, and stories about us that are told fairly, accurately, and with impact. They are changing hearts and minds. Now, research tells us that Americans are becoming more accepting of their gay, lesbian, transgender, and bisexual friends and neighbors. What are the top reasons for these attitudes? It's pretty straightforward, so to speak. Knowing somebody who's gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender makes a huge difference. So does learning about LGBT issues in the news. And so does seeing gay and transgender storylines on television, in the movies, and in other media. Now, what do these three things have in common? They all transform our community from invisible to visible. Visibility is our roadmap to victory. Visibility leads to respect. Respect leads to equality. And that's GLAAD, media watchdog, advocate, storyteller, making gay people more visible, more respected, more equal every day. Now, it is in this particular way that GLAAD works alongside groups that lobby and litigate to secure for LGBT Americans those greatest gifts of our founding fathers. You know, life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, those things that we were taught to believe were ours. We were taught to believe were ours back in grade school. Now, there are some in the gay community who've angrily denied that these promises are empty. They cite issues like the vote in Proposition 8 to mean something, to mean that America has abandoned her gay children, rejected that promise as they apply to us. Now, those critics might be right to be angry. They might be right on the facts. You see, we've had some tough losses at the ballot over the last couple of years. But they're wrong about the lessons to be taken from those losses. In our country, if you tell your story, if you work to tell about your hard times and your aspirations, if you live a life that's visible and persuade others in your family and in your community to do the same, it leads to understanding, it leads to respect, and that leads to equality. Equality is inevitable. You see, it's like a story. Once you've told a story, you can't untell it. Once you're known to your family, your coworkers, your friends, once they respect your contributions to society, that positive change can't be undone. It will be our own plain-spoken truths, our stories, that will win equality. And like the story of that high school senior in Mississippi who wanted to go to her prom, you know that story. You know, she's here with us tonight. Constance McMillan, will you stand up? Constance's courage will be a story for the ages. Another story of an NFL football player who's straight, married, and with kids, but uses this very important bully pulpit to tell another story, a great story, a story that he believes in his America, we all deserve the right to marry the person we love. That NFL football player is with us here tonight. His name, he is the Super Bowl champion, Scott Fujita. Scott, thank you for speaking up. Stand up, Scott. Where are you? There he is. You know, one day, not so far away, we will live in a nation that gives all of its children life and liberty and happiness. Young Constance is waiting for that day. So are Scott, so's Ricardo, and so are all of us. We're the ones who are going to determine when and where we get there. We are the ones. You know, it's like that line that we heard from a certain president. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Thank you for helping us get there, my friends. Your support tonight helps GLAAD make this country a more equal place. Thank you to GLAAD's board, our staff, our corporate sponsors, and each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Thank you to Neil and his predecessor, Joan Gary, on whose shoulders I stand, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Welcome to GLAAD.